Albert and Kathy, thank you so much for having me to your wonderful home in South Texas. So I want to start with the relationship here. You two, Border Patrol love, right? Which might surprise people. Yeah. So Kathy, tell us that story. How did you meet? How did a Border Patrol marriage happen?
Well, we met at supervisor school, but we didn't start dating till there was a detail. He came and visited a couple times. I was in Arizona, and we met up there after we had met at supervisor school, and long distance communication, we just stayed in touch. I ended up moving to Laredo, which is where he lived, and we dated.
For a while?
We got my own place. We dated for a while, and
the rest is history.
The rest is history, yeah.
Well, and combined, I think you have 50 years or so, I mean, in law enforcement and Border Patrol, correct?
Combined, yeah, a little over 50.
Wow. Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Kathy, what drew you to law enforcement? Why did you want to get in?
Well, I loved horses, and that's kind of a funny way, but I mean, I was always an outdoors person. I wanted to get a job where I wasn't doing the same thing every single day, and I had never heard of the Border Patrol. I had wanted to go in with the U.S. Park Police, but when I graduated from college, I didn't. They had a hiring freeze. So I looked online. Online was brand new. I looked online and I saw that the Border Patrol was hiring, and I was like, Border Patrol? What is it? Never heard of that one. So I looked it up, and they had horses. Yeah. And so I put it. That was pretty much it. I wanted an agency where I didn't want local, I didn't want state, I wanted some place where I would have my dad was military, so I was a military brat, so I understood the value for me of being able to be mobile and being able to have different opportunities if I wanted to leave one area and explore a different area. So they had the two things that I wanted, mobility and horse patrol. And
okay.
Mine was a lot different.
Yeah, so well, hold on first though. So tell me, in terms of your father and being a military brat, being an Air Force brat, so wearing the uniform, guarding America was almost ingrained in you?
Well, my family has a lot of military. My aunt, my uncle, my grandfather was in, actually my grandfather was in World War II. He actually played the piano, entertained troops in the Navy. Of course, he had other duties too, but that's what his collateral duty, I guess, would be. So I always heard the stories about the military and I worked for Navy JAG in Washington, Alexandria, Virginia, actually at that time, when I was in college. So I was always surrounded by military. Yeah. So yeah, it was ingrained.
Okay. And Albert, how about your story? How did you get in law enforcement?
Well, it's what I studied in college. I have a degree in criminal justice, and so, having a badge and a gun at the young age of 22 was something that I really enjoyed, doing that work and the adrenaline. And so I knew I wanted to do that. The only problem was that the pay for police officers in this area just wasn't there. It's hard to make a living on that salary as a local police officer in the early 90s. I graduated and I looked at other possibilities, put a couple of applications, some with the state and federal. So back in 97 when I joined the Border Patrol, that's when they started to hire just year round. And so I was fortunate in that way, and so I put in, and I was able to join the Border Patrol, made a 26-year career. Of course, Border Patrol, has a very strong presence here. Growing up along the border, you saw them all the time on the road, different places. So it was an easy fit for me.
Yeah. How about some of the Democrat politicians in Washington, D.C., a lot of the media personalities, supposed media big shots in places like New York, they want to project a narrative that Border Patrol is somehow racist, that it's somehow anti-Latino. What's your response?
They need to look at the statistics and what makes up the force, because I think Border Patrol is probably close to 50% Hispanic. So that narrative is false. Just a quick FOIA for Border Patrol would answer that question. It's heavily Hispanic, and there's a little bit of everything, but that's just false narrative.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Kathy. So Donald Trump won Starr County, the most Hispanic county in all of America. And one of the reasons we're here is to try to explain to the rest of America, why that happened and what it portends for the future, what it projects going forward. Why do you think that Donald Trump won this historically very Democratic county?
Well, it seems like his popularity has been gaining, but I think that a lot of it was the younger generation and the older generation that has seen the historical, lack of assistance down here. I mean, I think they've been wanting help from the Democrats, and they've seen that they have not gotten the results that they wanted. This area is very conservative. I mean, we have a high demographic of Democrats, but most of the people here are Catholic. Most of the people here are conservative. So they're conservative Democrats. And when they see the Democrats taking on agendas that don't meet the values of the younger generation here and the older generation here, I think that played a really big part.
Yeah. Can you be specific? What parts of the Democrat Party of the 2020s is not, to your point, it's not your parents or your grandparents' Democrat Party, right?
Right.
It's very, very different, way more radical.
Right.
But what issues specifically? Do you think, is it border? Is it gender confusion? What motivated people to say, wait, this isn't really my party anymore?
Well, I think immigration is a big one. There's a lot of people here that have come into this country legally, and they believe in law and order. I think that's huge. I think that there's also a discomfort with the DEI, with the, as you put it, gender confusion.
Yeah.
I don't think that that people want to have that in their schools. As a woman, I don't want it. I don't want to share my gender with men.
Right.
And I think that a lot of women feel that way. I think that we started to see a little bit of that creeping in here. We had, our son had a teacher aide who was wearing women's clothes, and when I brought it up at the school, they acted like I was the problem.
Wow.
And I think that maybe other people saw that too. Maybe there were other circumstances where they had the same experience. And it grows on you. I mean, it stays with you.
Sure.
And when you're in the ballot box, you think of those things, of how it affects you and your family.
Yeah. And that might be popular in the faculty lounge at University of California, Berkeley.
Right.
But it doesn't fly in Starr County, does it?
No, it's not clear across the country.
Maybe in the schools, maybe the teachers feel that way, but the families don't.
Yeah. So, Albert, tell me, let's get back to the Border Patrol experiences. What was the best part of being in Border Patrol?
Oh, I loved it. I had a great career, being able to work in different parts of the country. I never saw myself leaving my hometown at a younger age, but having that ability, that flexibility was there. Knowing that you were doing something good for the country. There was very rewarding periods of time. Border Patrol used to have a unit called BORCAP, Criminal Alien Program. And what that unit did is it focused on exactly that, criminal aliens, people who had been convicted of crimes, and removing them. And to me, that was the most satisfying time because, and it was only a short, year or less, but you were removing the worst of the worst. People that, one, shouldn't have been here, but after they got in, they decided to commit criminal acts, sexual assaults, DWIs resulting in manslaughter, all kinds of stuff. And so removing people like that had no reason to be here to begin with, and then on top of that, they went out and committed these horrific acts, being able to put cuffs on them and remove them, to me that was very rewarding.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of great experiences in the different locations that I served at the different capacities. At the very end, being part of leadership and helping set policy and execute those policies and the decisions that come from the top, leading people, that was a real good experience for me.
It had to be satisfying to put, as you said, to put cuffs on a bad guy who not only broke into America, but then abused Americans, right? And to get him out and say, you're not going to hurt us any longer.
Yeah.
One of those people, one of the most horrific examples, is Jose Antonio Ibarra, who crossed the border illegally into the United States, committed 2 additional crimes in New York City and in Athens, Georgia, both so-called sanctuary cities. He then killed Laken Riley in a totally unprovoked, vicious, monstrous attack. And thankfully that case got a lot of attention, but it's hardly, the only case. What's your reaction to the Biden administration, to the Biden-Harris administration, allowing an open border, allowing a monster like Jose Ibarra to cross pretty freely into this country?
Well, it's those policies that resulted in the defeat of the Democratic candidate, I think, in this election. You can't have an open border. There's a reason that laws are enacted. We go through the process, introducing a bill, passing it in the House, passing it in the Senate, signed by the president. It becomes a law. That's how we govern. That's what our process here in this country. And then to have a single person sign an executive order, to not enforce or, in some cases, support these sanctuary cities and states. And it just goes against the will of the people. And I don't support it. I don't think a lot of people do. And potentially that had a big impact. I think it did on this last election. So now we're seeing the total opposite. Looking at information and statistics this morning, illegal entries are down by 50% already in 1 week. In 1 week of aggressive enforcement of the worst, the message is getting out. And so seeing a 50% drop in illegal entries in 1 week of this new administration, that tells the whole story, I think.
Yeah. Kathy, let me ask you about that aspect of deterrence, right? I mean, as former Border Patrol, longtime law enforcement veteran, it seems to me it's not just about enforcing the law, which is, of course, important, but it's the deterrent effect of telling those criminals or telling the potential illegal migrants in the United States, hey, don't come here. We're going to get you, and we're going to send you home. How important is that, given your experience?
Well, you have to have follow through, right? You can't tell one person you can't cross illegally, and then the person that crossed illegally, you let them go, because you're telling a different story. When you give benefits, when you give incentives to people to break the law, people will break the law. Some are good people, but they see an opportunity, and when you say one thing and you do another, they're speaking loud and clear. That somebody was encouraging people to come here. They weren't just letting people go. People don't just end up at the border. Somebody was going and getting these people, bringing them to the border and allowing them to cross. In some cases, we were even flying them here on the taxpayer dollar. So that's not telling people that we are, that we enforce our laws.
Right.
That's telling people that we're making exceptions right now. And when we're making exceptions right now, people are going to take advantage of it. I don't think that some of those illegal aliens even recognize that they were illegal aliens.
Right.
They think that the government sanctioned this, it appears to them. They were using asylum laws to benefit illegal aliens. We knew, they knew, everybody knew that they were coming here for financial incentives, for the reasons for a better life.
Yeah.
Yes, they were gaming the system. The government, the politicians were gaming the system.
Sure.
The poor illegal aliens are now going to suffer the consequences because they're going to be removed with some of them with a deportation. Because they crossed illegally. Somebody told them, all you have to do is say that you fear returning, and they'll let you go.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I feel for them.
Sure.
But the law is the law.
Yeah.
And now these people are going to suffer the consequences of the politicians playing games with our immigration system.
I think this is an important point you're making, too, is that we are not demonizing the illegal migrants. Many of them are making a rational choice, right? If you've been invited into the United States, if you've been given an app on your phone and a free flight into the United States, why wouldn't you make that choice? If I'm a young man in Guatemala or Honduras, I would make that choice, right? So, we're not demonizing them. They made a rational choice, but it wasn't rational for the people of America.
Right.
And to your point, too, I think this is also important. I did a video that went really viral where a young man, an illegal migrant from Venezuela in Chicago, I tried to get him into the Democrat convention, which of course he wasn't allowed in. They had a wall. They had security. They
have standards.
They had standards, yeah. And but one of the things that surprised me most talking to him he didn't think he was here illegally.
Right.
I mean, he didn't think that. Fascinating, right? And I think he, in his heart, didn't even realize that he doesn't belong in the
He was
United
probably
States.
one of those that got brought in by a government plane.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean,
But that's how distorted things.
that's not how illegal crossings happen, right?
Right.
They happen at night along the river,
Yeah.
hidden from,
Yeah.
law enforcement. That's probably why he didn't think he was here illegally.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and he was being housed in a downtown Chicago high-rise at taxpayer expense. So I guess, yeah, you would say, of course I'm welcome here, right?
Yes.
Okay, turning away from border issues for a moment, and other reasons why Stark County, again, this place that historically massively Democratic for a century, literally voted for Democrat presidential candidates, voted for Donald Trump, and by the way, not by a little bit. I mean, Trump romped here, and won by 16% in 2024 in this county, this border area of South Texas. Your wife mentioned inflation and young people. It seems to me that young people, one of the reasons that young people are gravitating to the America First movement and to Donald Trump as a politician is they're hurt worse by inflation. They're generally not wealthy yet. They generally don't own a lot of assets. And life is hard for them. It's hard for them to find an apartment they can afford to rent. It's really hard for them to afford a home they could buy, maybe even impossible. And you're in the business of producing goods. So like you have a better vantage point than a lot of folks, as people in agriculture and ranching. What has the inflation scene been like for the last 4 years under Biden?
Well, I mean, where do you start? Groceries, gasoline, feed for livestock. It's everywhere. And everything is driven really by the price of fuel, gasoline and diesel. Everything has to be shipped in a train or an 18-wheeler. And when the diesel goes $3.50 a gallon, the trucking companies aren't going to absorb that. They're going to pass that on to the consumer. And so, this drill policy that President Trump has is big in Texas. Texas being, having a lot of oil and gas, natural resources. This community, this county, having a lot of people working in the oil field and the pipeline and the whole industry. So these are the people that are out there supporting Trump, but we're also the ones. These are the people that are also feeling the pinch in groceries, in fuel. In my case, I've had to make the decision to buy less feed because it's so expensive. A bag of feed now costs $13. And that's shopping around. Years back, it would have been maybe 10 or less. Mm-hmm. And so inflation is a big issue for, I think, everybody. But the people that are getting out of college and trying to join the workforce and trying to go independent and not live with mom and dad at home, they're feeling it especially tough because the rent is so expensive. Everybody's having to raise their prices everywhere. Inflation is I think something that really maybe was the Achilles too for the Democratic Party in this past election.
Yeah. Kathy, what do you want to see from President Trump in his now second term?
Well, I'm very happy with his picks for a lot of these cabinet positions. He's people like, I'll just give Joel Salatin. I am a huge fan of his. He is the lunatic farmer who is bringing common sense back to agriculture. The fact that he somebody pointed him, and brought up his name and they picked him, tells me so much about Trump's agenda for the American people, because he's not going with the multi-billionaire Gates, who owns all this farmland that's probably using petroleum on all of his fields. He's going with somebody that wants to go back to common sense. Everything that he's doing is common sense, it seems like. And I just want him to make do on his promises. And he did that the first time, as much as he could. I think he's surrounding himself with better people this time. And I just would like to see the results of the common sense agenda.
Yeah. In that regards, pertaining to food, agriculture, and since you're in this business and live this every day, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what are your thoughts on him and his proposals?
He's an interesting one, because if you would have asked me a year or two ago what I thought about him, I probably would have said that I wasn't a fan. But I've been, since COVID, and all of the issues with big pharma that have really kind of come to light, I really appreciate him. I appreciate him as a selection at the very least, so that we can get some truth.
Yeah.
I think that he is going to let us, open some doors to some facts that were kept from mainstream
Sure.
America.
Some transparency is
Yeah,
needed,
I'm upset that I allowed our son to have some of the vaccines that he had as a child without even questioning it. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but let's look at these things and ask why for each one, just so that we know, and let's stop making it mandatory in the schools and pressuring families to make choices without being truly aware of what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think he is valuable
Yeah.
for Trump
Yeah.
at this point.
I feel you that on the exact issue. My wife and I just allowed our pediatrician to do the entire vax schedule on our children, and I'm not anti-vax, but I also now realize that my eyes have been opened that so many of our institutions lie to us, including the medical establishment, including big pharma.
I got shingles when I was in my 40s, early to mid 40s, and I started asking myself, why am I getting shingles? And then I started looking at the chickenpox vaccine. Why are we giving chickenpox vaccine? Was it deadly? I don't remember it being deadly. We gave our son the chickenpox vaccine. I regret it now because now he's going to have a booster, or else he's going to get it when he's older, supposedly. Shingles, from what I understand now, chickenpox was for the older Americans like a booster on your immune system against shingles. And because nobody's getting chickenpox anymore, we're no longer being exposed. That's my understanding to chickenpox. So now you're seeing shingles coming in more and more.
Yeah.
And you see ads now on the TV offering shingles vaccines.
Yeah.
So I would like to see some sanity get back to the medical
Sure.
profession.
So, Albert, when you were done with your law enforcement career, you decided to run for office, run for sheriff. So I'm still in law enforcement, but on the elected side.
Right.
Why'd you make that decision?
Well, I see a lot of potential for the county here. There's a lot of opportunities that are passing us by. And, I was ready to retire, but too young to be fully retired. So the election was coming up, and I said, you know what? I never wanted to be in politics, but I want to do something good. I want to stay engaged. I want to stay in the field. And so I decided to run my campaign for sheriff. I was the first person to run for sheriff as a Republican here in over 100 years.
Wow.
So that that tells you a lot.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience. The election didn't turn out in my favor. I'm not ashamed of it. I think I gave the people a choice. I got a lot of people to understand that, you know what, Republicans aren't bad.
Yeah.
Here's this guy, he's got a good background coming from the federal government. He's a local. He's making sense with the things he wants to do. And I don't know, I'm hoping that maybe that stigma that exists against Republicans, that we're all for the rich and we're evil, we chipped away at that.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, and thank you for doing it. Thank you both for doing it, because it's a family effort when somebody runs for office. But I think that's so crucial to recognize that even when we lose elections, we can still win big picture, meaning you're shaping the race, you're putting pressure on the winner, on the incumbent. You're changing the narrative, right? You're changing perceptions. And so all of that is so crucially important. But let me ask you about that too, because let me give you the counter argument. Okay, so we're all on the right, celebrating the fact that Trump won Stark County, and it's amazing, right? I mean, it truly is amazing in just 8 years how much he moved here. However, locally, Democrats are still winning, right? And still winning fairly handily, right? So how do we make it in Stark County and places like it across America, working class places, Hispanic places, how do we make the Trump phenomenon a lasting phenomenon post-Trump?
Well, I think a lot of it has to be engagement. The parties, by the way, no local candidate across the Rio Grande Valley, 4 counties won. No local Republican won a local race. So, and the margins there are very similar. So to me, it's not a candidate issue. It's still that stigma that the party has with the local people. So how do you work against that? Is you get engaged, you get involved, you start doing things for the community, scholarships for high school students. You see, a family that was devastated by a home fire, or the parents became ill. You do fundraisers. You get more involved with the people in the community. You got to do that, and you connect with the people, and they start realizing that, hey, Republicans aren't monsters. They're human. They have families too. They struggle with bills too. They're like us. And so there has to be that constant connection. And I don't see that right now. I'd like to see more of that locally, and hopefully that would change things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think we're moving that way, but work to do, right?
A lot of work to do. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So Albert, very near here, where we are in Stark County at the U.S.-Mexico border, there was a shooting yesterday at law enforcement, at Border Patrol of the United States. Thankfully, nobody was hit, but still, scary situation. You've been in scary situations. What's your reaction?
Yeah, that shooting happened in the western side of the county, in the area of Fronton, Texas. A very problematic area, an area that's very remote. One of the areas that historically went less patrolled because of how far it was and limited resources. But it's a problematic area. That's the area that you would see the largest drug seizures, the cross-border violence between cartels. During my time with the Border Patrol, we even found weapons, grenades on the ground, just doing our normal routine job. And that was from gun battles that happened across the border, and people fleeing, the losing party fleeing Mexico and jumping the border to the U.S. But we've had shootouts there in the past as well. So much so that during the Biden administration, when enforcement took more of a backstage approach, the state moved in. There's an island there that the Texas Department of Public Safety, through the governor's office, went out there and they cleared it. It was a no man's land, so to speak. They would stage weapons and drugs and people in there, and that was the area where this happened yesterday. So the cartels have now been designated as a criminal or a terrorist organization by the Trump administration. So that opens up the ways in which the government can address those cartels now. I don't know if that was a response. The agents, as I understood, that were shot at yesterday were unprovoked. They were just doing their job. They had been given intelligence that the bounty was out, the word was put out that they can shoot at law enforcement on this side of the border, and that's exactly what happened yesterday. An unprovoked attack. Thank God nobody was shot or killed. There was a response there, a good response, a multi-agency response, and so it speaks of the dangers that exist living on the border, and how volatile and how quick things can change, and that was seen yesterday.
Yeah.
Can I just add something?
Please.
With the change in tempo with Border Patrol, with enforcement, this is a second. We had an agent that was shot in Vermont not too long ago and tragically lost his life. Right. So we're seeing this violence. We're going to see more violence, because when you go from a stance of welcoming and assisting cartels in a way to enforcement, people are, the bad guys are going to react. So I think that the Biden administration didn't do any favors to law enforcement by making everything so lax. It's going to make it harder for agents out there now. So I think that they'll need thoughts and prayers of the American people to keep them safe.
Let me ask you about that too, regarding the cartels. It seems to me the Mexican cartels, which are terrorist organizations and now properly designated as so, it's one of the most vicious terrorist organizations on the entire planet. And they've really been emboldened. They've been made wealthier during the Biden administration. And we have created a pretty dangerous monster that we have to take on now. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. We have lined their pockets with so much money because they were able to charge each person, and we finished the job. We would, in some cases, all they had to do was deliver them to the border, and then we used the American taxpayers to drive them to their final destination. So yes, we've made them very wealthy, and with that wealth comes weapons, comes power, comes favors. So,
Yeah.
yeah, a very dangerous situation.
Yeah.